So, welcome to the Sustainability Toolkit, a practical guide to integration of sustainability. And welcome to our special guests today, Sandra Tavares and Stephen Bowles. I'm just going to take a very quick moment to remind everybody, I'm in the wrong presentation. Remind everybody a little bit about the Sustainability Learning Center. We are a learning and networking hub for sustainability that provides professional development and skill certification on sustainability core competencies. And our mission is to equip people with the skills and knowledge to create an environmentally sustainable and socially responsible world. And we provide face-to-face instructor-led training, lunch and learns, skills certification with the International Society of Sustainability Professionals, Canadian Business for Social Responsibility, The Natural Step, and others. And we have a partnership with Green Education Online, where we have 51 e-learning modules that provide foundational understanding on everything from water conservation to sustainable supply chains. So we hope you'll have a chance to look at our website and our Sustainability Learning Network, where we do house all the recordings of these sessions. So you will receive a copy of the link for the recording, but we will then also move it so that it will stay forever on the back end of our website. And you can find the Sustainability Learning Network. Go to the first page of our website. In the upper right-hand corner, there's the link, and it's free to join. So you just have to create a little profile there, and you'll be able to go on and see all of the webinars that we've ever done. So with that, I just wanted to also just remind you that this program today is going to be a 4-part, more in-depth program to help you, lead you through the process of using the toolkit to implement sustainability within your organization. And that starts on the 24th. And I believe the early registration deadline for that is next week. So if you find that this is a useful process today, you might want to have a look at that. We are starting our Green Gap Assessment course again next Tuesday. So if you've got a green team that you're looking to revitalize or align with the overall strategy of your organization, that starts on Tuesday. A Green Project Management starts on October the 9th, and we've got this great program called Reconceiving Conservation that is really about re-understanding the way that we go about looking at sustainability and conservation and looking at things just a little differently. So, we've done a couple of webinars on that, and it's a fabulous program. And then we have a couple of on-site programs. Our Life Cycle Assessment course is happening in Toronto in November, as well as a Sustainable Procurement Program, October 10th. And then finally, we have a whole bunch of on-demand and e-learning courses. So with that, I am going to now pass over the, program to Sandra and to Stephen. And Sandra, I'm just passing you the ball. So we'll there you go. So you now have command of the slides. So if you want to welcome to the program today, we're thrilled to have you.
Thank you, Catherine. And I guess it's my turn to introduce myself. I see that people are introducing themselves through chat as well. I do want to say that if you have any questions along the way, to either raise your hand or put them in the chat box. And we can answer them as we go through the presentation. So who is Tavares Group Consulting? We're a corporate social responsibility firm. We're based in London, Ontario. And really our work has really focused on the process approach that supports sustainability planning and implementation. And it's included management systems work, both on the ISO and 18001 side, anywhere from gap analysis through implementation and auditing, and in a number of different sectors. So we do some additional work that sort of supports the whole sustainability process as well, including compliance and those kinds of things. We've done a variety of sustainability planning projects as well. So we've been lucky in the sense that we've participated in the development of ISO 26000, which some of you may be familiar with, and that focuses on guidance on social responsibility. And we're also involved in the 2004 version and the current revision of ISO 14001, the Environmental Management System Standard. And we will be talking about management systems, how we've integrated that into the toolkit. And I think one of the reasons why it's important to utilize 14001 as the framework for sustainability implementation is really going to become clear in the new revision of 14001, because it's really going to focus on supply chain requirements. So in saying that and sort of describing our work, I'll pass it over to Steve, and he can introduce Kazuka.
Hi everyone, I'm Steve. I'm the president of Kazuka, and just to let you folks know why there's a couple of different companies that are presenting this today, it's because the toolkit is a joint partnership project that was co-developed by both Tavares Group and Kazuka. So that is why there are both of us speaking today. Kazuka is also located near London, Ontario, which for those of you that aren't aware of where that is, it's kind of halfway between cities of Toronto and Detroit in southern Ontario, Canada. Kazuka is a company that also provides sustainability services and consulting focus on projects like strategic planning and data verification, greenhouse gas management projects, and training and outreach. And we've been had the pleasure to work in a number of different industry sectors, including food and beverage, agriculture and automotive, publishing and mining, amongst others. So it's really interesting to see how sustainability impacts a lot of these different industry sectors. And it's I often get asked the question, what does Kazuka mean? Because it's kind of a funny name, and it is actually a Swahili word that kind of, for the best translation possible, it would mean to emerge or grow, and that's kind of the kind of principles that we like to promote to our clients as we're helping them deal with sustainability issues. So my pleasure to be here today, and hopefully we can help you out with this toolkit.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. I should introduce myself as well. My name is Kiersey McClandress. I'm a Sustainability Associate here at Tavares Group Consulting. So I'm sure many of you are wondering, why build the Sustainability Toolkit? So as many of us know, I'm sure, the business case for implementing sustainability is well established. It's well known that implementation of sustainability provides organizations with that competitive edge. For instance, we know it can increase operational efficiency and drive down costs. It offers proactive responses to future risks and improve employee retention. It allows for innovation and new market opportunities, and it can also be used for promotional and branding opportunities. Second, we know an increasing number of stakeholders are starting to demand sustainability accountability and reporting. Our key stakeholders like investors, customers, and those in the surrounding community where organizations are in operation not only expect industries and organizations to be accountable and report, but now are also expecting transparency. The frameworks for reporting sustainability are also becoming well established. The frameworks like GRI, for example, globally there are nearly 4,000 organizations that follow the reporting guidelines of GRI and in their sustainability report. Now this sort of leads us to the final point on the slide here, which is the real driver behind the development of the toolkit, and that although the business case for implementing sustainability is proven and that reporting frameworks are well established, the framework for planning and implementing a comprehensive sustainability program is not well established. As I'm sure many of you that are here with us today know, that questions like where do I start or what's next are often asked when tasked with implementing sustainability.
Steve, I think you're on next.
Sorry, guys. I had myself muted there to keep my background noise quiet. Anyways, the Sustainability Toolkit. I wanted to just let everyone know how it came about and what the background of it is. We Tavares Group and Kazuka, a couple of years ago, were contracted by Huron County, which is one of the local municipalities in southern Ontario near London, when they were developing their sustainability plan for the county. They wanted to have some early win projects to show how sustainability could actually be implemented within the county and as part of its, to show sustainability in action, basically. And development of a sustainable manufacturing toolkit was one of those early win projects that they wanted to develop. So Tavares Group and Kazuka developed the Sustainable Manufacturing Toolkit for the County of Huron manufacturing sector, and it was completed and accepted by Council in January of 2012. And it was that project that really had some of the set the groundwork for what we have developed today and what we are introducing to you folks today. So that was kind of we still like to give credibility to the Huron County folks for for kind of being the impetus for everything that we're doing today. Next slide, please, folks. And after we completed that project for the Huron County manufacturing sector, we realized that we had something that was that really had some good bones to it. It was done on a very, very small budget, and there was some limitations to what we were able to accomplish with that initial project for Huron County. But we could see that there was some aspects of it that we really wanted to enhance and improve. So we approached the National Research Council. They have a program called the Industrial Research Assistance Program, usually referred to as IRAP, that provides funding for projects that are, in the research and development phase to help enhance those projects and to push them along to become more market ready. Tavares Group applied, for funding from IRAP and was successful in receiving it. And IRAP, we want to, acknowledge their support. They provided 50% of the development funds to get the toolkit for the initial research that we did in its development and the preparation of the beta version that is now being released. Next slide, folks.
All right. Now, in developing the content for the toolkit, extensive research was conducted on the sustainability reporting requirements imposed by major companies on their supply chains. Several dozen companies with supply chain sustainability reporting programs from various sectors, such as clothing and retail, automotive, food and beverage industry, agriculture, sports apparel, aluminum, technology, furniture, healthcare, I could really go on, were reviewed. Now, by doing so, the foundational research for the toolkit has really made it truly applicable to organizations of all sizes across industry sectors. Finally, publicly available information such as our CSR responsibility or sustainability reports, supplier codes of conduct, and supplier sustainability guidelines were also reviewed. And now I'll hand it off to Sandra, who will highlight some of the key findings from this research.
So on the environment side, we found that there were a number of common metrics that were requested by a number of supply chains. Over 80% of supply chains requested energy, greenhouse gas, waste, and water information, with hazardous substances, air emissions, and wastewater that followed closely behind. Contamination issues related to soil and groundwater and noise also rounded out the environmental requirements. Toolkit development was really, it was certainly guided by our experience, but we also wanted to make sure that research supported this in a number of different sectors. So when we looked at the supply chain requirements, we found that the implementation of management systems, whether they were informal or certified, was requested by over 50% of supply chains to manage sustainability requirements. Audits were the top method to monitor sustainability, and customer-supplier engagement was also encouraged. So the Sustainability Toolkit was developed, as it was said previously, to address a critical gap in the evolving field of sustainability and CSR as well. Several organizations have developed frameworks that define the social responsibility, such as ISO 26000, describe how sustainability efforts should be reported, for example, the Global Reporting Initiative, or define how specific sustainability criteria such as the environment or metrics such as health and safety. So I'm sure everybody's heard of 14001 and 18001. However, there's been a lack of guidance on how to actually implement sustainability in an organization. So what the toolkit has done is really integrated these globally recognized frameworks and approaches, and it's resulted in a practical systems-based approach to sustainability implementation that's applicable to all sizes and organizations across various industry sectors. So on the ISO 26000 side, the toolkit adapted the principles of accountability, compliance, ethical behavior, stakeholder interest, and transparency, as well as criteria, or is otherwise known in ISO 26000 core subjects, which include environment, operating practices, products and services, and community. So these criteria are going to apply to all organizations. The result of all that work really is a two-part tool. First, we have a brief and easy-to-read guidance document that describes how the toolkit works. And the second part is the action plan and assessment tool that Steve's going to be covering a little later on. So what we found with a lot of our sustainability work was that organizations would either identify a number of sustainability projects or actions, but there was no formalized process to prioritize these projects and actions, and they weren't really utilizing or improving their existing systems to manage these sustainability issues. So for example, actions and projects would be so numerous that organizations wouldn't know where to start, or ultimately, there were so few sustainability actions that organizations would find themselves asking what's next. So the process-based approach's success in the toolkit is really the fact that there's a definite starting point that allows organizations to identify and prioritize sustainability risks. It allows them to set objectives. It allows them to build on existing internal processes to manage these issues, in addition to monitoring progress, fulfilling reporting requirements to stakeholders, and then act on those results to improve their sustainability performance. So this process of sort of building onto or integrating into existing organizational processes is really going to also assist in identifying redundancies, and thereby improving the organization's efficiency in managing these sustainability priorities. So the sustainability wheel really provides a visual representation of the linkage between all of the key concepts that we've talked about, and then the approaches that have been incorporated into the toolkit. So, which includes, of course, the sustainability principles and criteria that we adapted from ISO 26000, and the Plan, Do, Check, and Act implementation framework and steps that were adapted from the management system approaches, which introduces the cycle of continual improvement, which is denoted by the arrows, and that's how we continually improve sustainability performance. So how it works is that the sustainability principles of accountability, compliance, ethical behavior, et cetera, they comprise the outer ring of the wheel to indicate that they apply to every sustainability initiative that the organization implements. The criteria, which we talked about, that applies to all organizations, so things such as the environment, operating practices, products and services, and the community, they're located in the inner ring of the wheel, and are the sustainability categories that, as I said, apply to all organizations. The relevant sustainability metrics, which will need to be identified from each criterion will be organizational specific, and Steve is going to talk about those a little later on. So what I mean to say by that is that not all metrics are going to apply to all organizations, but all the criteria will apply to all organizations. The individual steps and phases of the Plan, Do, Check, and Act framework comprise the inner portion of the wheel. So this essentially gives you a starting point. You start at number 1, you work all the way to number 13, and it really needs to be followed. This process needs to be followed when you're addressing criteria and the metrics. As I said before, the arrows indicate continuous improvement, which is a result of the Plan, Do, Check, and Act approach.
Okay, so the wheel that we just had showing there, that really is like one of the core pieces of the toolkit, because it really gives the visual relationship between all of the different aspects that we are promoting here. I'm just going to go through in a little bit more detail the concepts of the principles and the criteria and metrics and indicators that we've been talking about, so that it's a little bit better understood. The principles that Sandra was just talking about, which we have displayed as what we call the outer ring of the sustainability wheel. The reason why they're on that outer ring is because, like Sandra said, they are to be considered for every sustainability initiative that an organization implements, whether it's a water reduction project or an effort to improve health and safety metrics within a facility. It doesn't matter which criteria, whether it's environment or community, the principles still need to be applied. And I thought I would just kind of give an example of how these different principles might be applied for a specific project within the food manufacturing sector. For instance, if there was a project that the manufacturer had where they wanted to reduce their impact of their packaging materials, maybe they were considering the design of the packaging or the input materials that were used. Well, how would these principles be applied in a project like that, where they are trying to reduce their packaging impact? Well, in order for them to consider compliance, they would probably, if it was packaging, they would want to make sure that they were avoiding any kind of banned or restricted substances in the packaging that they were using as one aspect of compliance. Another area of compliance with packaging might be recycled content requirements that are being imposed farther down the line by some different, for instance, in Ontario, there's some of the provinces have some recycled content requirements that are imposed, so those kinds of considerations have to be made for the compliance side. In terms of stakeholder interests, they would probably want to consider what consumers have indicated. The end users have indicated what are their preferences in terms of the packaging design or the packaging materials that are being used. What are their customers or retailer requirements that are being imposed by the powerful retailers that are actually selling the products in terms of design and content. And also, as another stakeholder is their suppliers, the people that provide them with the packaging materials. What are their capabilities to provide the kinds of packaging that might be being switched? Are the suppliers able to provide those kinds of revised packaging designs or input materials? So those are the kinds of considerations that might be included there. In terms of transparency, transparency is sometimes one that raises the hair on the back of people's neck, because they think that it means they have to share all of their trade secrets and stuff like that, and that's not really the case. It's transparency just means that the communication about some project details in terms of probably higher level details like the objectives or the results, without releasing proprietary or confidential information. It's about communication without without damaging or putting into jeopardy the company's or organization's confidential information. Accountability is one that I probably struggle with to describe, but I'm going to try anyways. Accountability is about making sound decisions that consider the impact of what, the sustainability initiative on society, on the environment, and economic performance. So it's kind of, in my opinion, it's about making the right decision that considers not only one aspect, but it looks at the big picture. And for instance, if this food manufacturer was looking at developing lighter packaging as a way to improve the environmental performance and environmental impact of their packaging itself, well, that's one positive benefit of improving the packaging, but how does that impact the shelf life of the food that is being packaged? Does the shelf life increase or decrease? Because if the shelf life decreases, then you could argue that that would be a negative aspect that should be considered if you're being accountable for the whole decision-making process. How does a lighter packaging impact damage during the transport of the food? If damage increases and food waste increases, then that is a negative aspect that has to be looked at if you're going to be accountable for the whole process. So, and ethical behavior, I don't know how else to say that except that honesty and integrity should be obviously used in all kinds of decisions and actions that are taken. So those are the principles, and I tried to provide an example there of how they might be applied to a specific project, and they're going to, any sustainability initiative that is being implemented should have those considered. Then you get into the criteria, which are actually the high-level categories that are applicable to organizations when they're implementing sustainability. That's the environment, products and services, operating practices, and community. It's kind of difficult to implement a sustainability initiative that's just, for the environment, because each of these different or operating practices, because each of these criteria contain so many different aspects or metrics that need to be that can be considered. The metrics are the actual sustainability variables that are relevant to an organization. Now, the way to identify metrics is by using a risk-based approach that considers stakeholder priorities and benchmarking against competitors or industry averages and such. So that the metrics that are relevant to one organization are going to be different than the metrics that are relevant to another. So, that's why there is the need to, at the very beginning of sustainability planning and sustainability implementation, to go through that process of, risk-based assessments to determine which metrics your organization should be managing in terms of their sustainability efforts. The next level down in terms of the kinds of in terms of the information is the indicator. Indicators are the measurements that are actually used for monitoring an organization's sustainability performance. So on the screen here you can see the relationship using just a few different examples of metrics within the environmental criteria. So the high-level criteria is environment. The next level down, the variables that are relevant to this particular organization are energy, greenhouse gas emissions, and water consumption. At the indicator level, this is where you determine what has to be measured for each of these metrics. And I'm just going to speak to greenhouse gas emissions here, but there's 3 different indicators that have been listed as are the measured items for greenhouse gas emissions. One are the Scope 1 or direct emissions. Another indicator is the energy indirect or Scope 2 emissions. And the third is the Scope 3 other indirect emissions. So that kind of shows you the different levels of management that have to occur in sustainability initiatives. And within, next slide please. So within the toolkit, what we have done is based on all of the research that we did in the whole supply chain reporting requirements that we did earlier in the project, we identified and provided information on over 20 different metrics and 45 indicators that are commonly required to be managed in these supply chain sustainability reporting programs. So that's not to say that this is an exhaustive list, because there's going to be other, there's going to be certain industries or certain sectors where there's going to be additional metrics or indicators that should be managed for. But what we have provided is, a compilation, to provide an easy resource for people to access, a list of the most commonly requested and managed indicators for each of the different criteria. So we provide the metrics and indicators that are commonly asked for in environment, operating practices, community, and products and services. And for each one of those indicators, as you can see on the screen here, where there is an equivalent index within the Global Reporting Initiative, we have provided what that index number is. We recognize that a lot of organizations are either currently or considering using the Global Reporting Initiative framework to report their sustainability efforts, so we thought that it was important to provide the GRI index in the toolkit as a kind of a value-added resource for people to be able to, easily make that linkage between our toolkit indicators and the GRI index. Next slide, please, folks.
And I think there was a question from Melissa, if I'm not mistaken.
Would that question be in?
Yeah, so I'll read it for you if you want.
Thank you.
So she was wondering about are there big differences between a large company's implementation versus a small company's implementation and maybe use of this toolkit?
Well, I mean, this is Sandra speaking here. The approach, as we said previously, is the same whether it's a small organization or a large organization. It still needs to go through the same sorts of steps because, as we said before, it's a management system approach. It's a process-based approach. So, I mean, the differences would come in, if there were specifics about a specific industry sector. So I don't know if that sort of answers your question, or if you had something a little bit more specific in mind in terms of the toolkit.
And Melissa, you can unmute yourself if you want to sort of dig a little deeper on that, if that's something that you're interested in doing. I was going to ask, while we're taking this pause too, has the G4 been integrated into it? I know the Global Reporting Initiative continues to evolve. So were you able to kind of look and see how that fits?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in the toolkit, we have referenced GRI, and it was the previous version of GRI, but we've certainly been looking at G4 and how that fits into the toolkit. So it's not, it's not radically different. The big issue here now is really determining materiality on a lot of these metrics, and that's what we're sort of asking people to do as they're determining what metrics apply to their specific organizations. And I don't know, Steve, if you have anything else to add to that.
No.
Okay. And I do see that Cheryl's asking which industry sectors were included in the supply chain research.
So Cheryl, when the supply chain research was done, the sectors that we looked at were clothing and retail, automotive, food and beverage industry, agriculture, sports apparel, aluminum. We looked at many technology companies as well, furniture, and healthcare.
And there's probably a few others
in
there as well.
There's a long list.
We just gave you just a few examples, but what we tried to do was cover a lot of different sectors to gather that information to make sure that it sort of matched up with our experience, what we were seeing. So it certainly was a good match.
Okay, so what we showed you before was the the sustainability wheel, which is the graphic or visual representation of how the Plan, Do, Check, Act steps link together with the criteria, and how the principles also apply for all of those different initiatives and steps. So that's the visual kind of representation, but we also developed more of a hands-on tool that can actually be used for organizations as they actually start to implement sustainability initiatives. Because we knew that realistically there has to be somewhere for for organizations to keep track of their information, to enter their information, and to work through each of these steps. And what we have is called the Action Plan and Assessment Tool, and it's an interactive management and assessment system that is based on the Plan, Do, Check, Act methodology. It's currently, in its current form for this beta version of the toolkit, a spreadsheet-based tool with separate different worksheets for each of the different phases of the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. And what we are currently doing is exploring and researching ways to take that spreadsheet-based version of the Action Plan and Assessment Tool and turn it into something probably more web-based that has increased functionality and increased ability for, and in the recognition that a lot of organizations would, be more amenable to using probably a web-based tool. So we are currently looking at ways to take this Action Plan and Assessment Tool and turn it into a web-based product. But the tool itself is, the purpose of it is to monitor progress, assess the implementation status of the organization's sustainability efforts, and determine what the level of integration is within that Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle that we propose. So, if we could go to the next slide, please. So some of the highlights of this Action Plan and Assessment Tool are the fact that there's, for each of these different phases, Plan, Do, Check, and Act, we provide numerous input fields for the accurate tracking and monitoring of sustainability efforts. Some of the fields that we provide are who is the responsible individual, who is taking charge of that aspect or that specific step of the sustainability implementation. What is the projected or actual completion date that the step was finished? What is the status? Is it in progress? Is it not yet started? Is it completed? And several other, input fields where this kind of information can be entered so that it's easily tracked, so that it's recorded and, available for people to monitor how the actual project is being implemented. At each step of the sustainability implementation cycle, we provide detailed guidance for the people that are actually going through and doing the implementation, so that they, there's only so much information that we can put, for instance, on the sustainability wheel. We are restricted by space there, and you can't put a lot of detail on a graphic representation like that. So it's in the Action Plan and Assessment Tool that for each one of those different 13 steps within the cycle, we provide detailed guidance to help the users determine how they need to address each of those different steps. Another key aspect of the action plan and assessment tool is that it is flexible. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the toolkit and its approach is that, you know, it is flexible because it can be used for any sustainability metric for any of the different criteria that have to be managed. It doesn't matter, like I said before, whether you are you know, trying to measure and reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, or whether you are trying to you know, improve the recycled content in one of your products, or develop a program to improve your community, you know, philanthropy efforts within the community. All of these different sustainability efforts can and should use and follow that same approach, that same action plan, and that is why this the action plan and assessment tool can, you know, gives a consistent and you know, and common you know, tool and framework that that organizations can use. So it's flexible and it's consistent, and I believe that those are key aspects that will really help organizations as they are trying to grasp how do they deal with this, you know, this big picture sustainability issue that has so many different aspects. A consistent approach, I think, is going to be very, very helpful, and currently has been lacking. So the action, I've kind of been describing the action plan part of that tool. There's also the assessment side, where we provide a few different levels of sustainability integration that an organization can strive to achieve to. And what this assessment system does is it assigns increased levels of achievement as an organization goes through the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle and continually improves its sustainability its sustainability performance. We've assigned 3 levels in this beta version of the toolkit, with the first level being called level single A, or level A, which is if an organization has met the core requirements of the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, that is the level that they will have achieved. And then if they continue to go through and continually improve and go through the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle for a specific sustainability initiative a second time, then they're at the level of continual improvement, and we call that level AA, or double A. And then level AAA within our assessment system is what we call leadership, and that is where sustainability initiatives are actually being pushed out to the organization's value chain. So they're pretty confident and happy with how they are, you know, implementing their sustainability initiatives internally. Well, then they're, you know, the leadership position is to then, you know, take that experience, take that knowledge, take that information, and try to push it out to the suppliers or customers, you know, on either end of the value chain. And that is what we call level AAA or AAA and leadership. So the action plan and assessment tool has, you know, the worksheets for the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, and it also has the ranking system for this assessment system that we've provided, or that we developed. So hopefully as people start to use that, they will find it useful, and also provide us with some feedback on how it can be improved and made even more helpful. Kiersey, I believe you're up next.
Yeah, I also see that there was a question there from Melissa. I think it was from Melissa, about the assessment that allows for queries for specific things.
And I was just responding to that. Unfortunately, I'm a very slow typist. But so what happens is we've determined that the criterion for environment applies to all organizations, and then an organization needs to have a materiality review of what metric applies to their particular operation. Within that, then we have to take a look at the indicators that sort of define that particular metric. So we do actually go into that level of detail, Melissa, in the toolkit. And again, it's all based on materiality. So the kinds of things that you need to look at when you're, at the beginning of the process where you're looking at stakeholder input and requirements, that's where you would sort of, take that into account and determine what applies. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, feel free to type it into the chat box.
All right, so this sort of brings us to the final section of the webinar today, which is just to highlight the current and future initiatives of the toolkit, which Steve actually sort of highlighted a little bit before. The beta version of the toolkit launched in May of this year, and we're currently having organizations of various industry sectors road test it and really work through the toolkit to provide us with feedback. Sectors that are involved with the beta testing currently include aerospace, in the education sector with a few post-secondary institutions using the toolkit. We have auto parts and manufacturing, retail, and power generation. Now this feedback in turn is being reviewed for adoption and will lead to the first publicly available version of the toolkit available in the spring of 2014. And as Steve also mentioned, we're always looking for additional road testers who are willing to use and work through the action plan and assessment tool and provide us with feedback. Now, Steve also highlighted a little bit that what lies ahead for the toolkit will be the conversion of the action plan and assessment tool as it stands in its current form, which is a spreadsheet-based tool, into a web-based application, and that we're also looking at integrating the toolkit with existing web-based data management systems in order to increase the ease of use for users. And obviously, through this transition, we will be integrating feedback and recommendations from our users into the toolkit as well. Now, if you are interested in using the action plan and assessment tool using examples from your own organization, we definitely invite you to sign up for our 4-week interactive online session that's being offered through the Sustainability Learning Center. Catherine spoke about it earlier today. Now, during the 4 weeks, participants will choose a sustainability metric or goal that's specific to their organization, and we'll actually work through the individual steps and phases of the action plan and assessment tool. So here you can see the dates are listed. We'd also like to mention that all sessions are recorded, and also after the session do include an interactive component via our blog on the Toolkit's official website. So if you can't attend one of the sessions, that's no reason not to sign up if you're interested, so you won't miss out on any information there. And this brings us to the end of the webinar. We'd like to take this opportunity for thanking you all to join us today. And please feel free to contact Steve, Sandra, or myself for more information. You can also visit the Toolkit's official website at sustainabilityimplementation.com. It actually just launched yesterday, and we're very excited about that, and has already been tweeted by the Global Reporting Initiative on Twitter, so that was pretty exciting. And we'd also like to open up the floor right now if anyone has questions. If you'd like to ask them over, by voice or in chat, we'd be more than happy to field some questions right now.
Terrific. Thank you very much. I noticed that Chris had a question, and I wonder, Chris, if your question is now answered. You were asking about what the key lessons learned from the project were, and then you were asking about getting a hold of the copy of the toolkit, and I think that Chrissy's probably giving you that information, but let me know whether or not your question was answered there. And there's something about the road testing of the toolkit. So Chris had a question about what's involved with road testing it. So what if one of the companies that were here were interested in participating in your beta version? What would be the steps for that?
Well, it's essentially, giving us a call, getting in touch with us, and we're happy to meet and talk about the toolkit and just get involved in the development. I mean, the current road testers or road testers as we call them, have been involved with have been working through the toolkit, and as they're going through each of the steps, we're there to basically assist and ask, answer any questions that they have to help them utilize the tool. So it not only helps us, it also helps the organization, understand the process and help them implement or help their implementation along. So just
That's terrific.
Give us a call or email us.
Okay. Any other questions that people have at this time about the tool, the approach? I mean, I think Chris did ask a question. What did you kind of learn from, and I think you went through some of that early on in the process, but if you had to have a bottom line, here's some things that we learned, what would be one or two of those things that you felt you got from the process of doing the research?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I'm not really...
Well, Chris had a question there. What was one of the things that you learned from the bottom line that you learned from the research that you did? So what were some of the lessons learned from this project?
Well, I mean, I think for me, and I can't speak on Steve's behalf, it validated a lot of the things that I was seeing with my clients. And in terms of, where to start, all the information that was available out there, it was sort of confusing to organizations as to where to start because there was so much information, but, what's step number one? So I think that was the big thing that I sort of took away from the research. A lot of the information that was being requested was also something that we had been seeing, with clients from a number of stakeholders. So I think one thing that's sort of predictive and that we've sort of seen from the research is the fact that there's an increasing level of supply chains that are requesting that management systems be implemented to manage a lot of these issues, and that's kind of a big thing. And also the fact that supply chains are expecting, that supply chain engagement is going to continue. So everybody has a responsibility to sort of further, the sustainability implementation. So that's certainly something that we're seeing that's trending, is that there's a big push on supply chain, and we're certainly seeing that with ISO 14000, the version that's currently under review. So it's certainly interesting what we've seen.
All right, that's great. Are there other questions for Sandra or Steve at this time around this project? I'm just trying to launch the poll, and it's not letting me do that. Oh, I know why it's not letting me do it. Okay, carry on. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, this is Melissa Stafford. I just had a quick question. I'm just someone that's very text-based. As well as taking those upcoming courses, is there like a text version we can end up purchasing?
Steve, do you want to answer that question?
Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
We are not. We're not charging a fee for the toolkit at this point. When we are looking for beta or road testers to to work with us on the improvement of this, it is we are the toolkit is being just given to those folks free of charge. And what kind of like the fee, I guess, if you want to think about it, is that we just ask that you continue as you use it or learn about it to give us feedback, and hopefully if you find it useful, maybe even what do you call it? What do you call it when you give a quote or something?
Endorsement.
Endorsement. Thank you. That was that was the word. Like those are the kinds of things that we are looking for at this phase. We're currently developing like the business model and revenue model for it, and we haven't quite finalized that yet, and that's still a number of months away, but because of the fact that we're still in the beta testing phase. So if you...
No, and I appreciate that. Because of the level that I'm at where I work, I am not in a position to be able to, be a beta tester. I just want to take, for my own edification, the 4 next continuing courses, and I just am a slow person, and I wondered if there was just some kind of a binder or something that we can get a copy of so that I can keep it, what I don't take good notes on.
During the course, Steve, will there be some materials, I guess, that will help Melissa follow through this whole process?
Yes, and we could provide Melissa with the, with the, what are we calling it, Sandra? The implementation
guide.
The implementation guide.
Yes.
Maybe that's what I'm beginning to. That's what I'm looking for, because like I said, I'm not in a position to be able to get my plant to be a beta test. I'm too low level. So this is me teaching myself to eventually try to get to that point, but we're not there. But just having something that I could have in my hand to remind me, yeah, this is what we did here, this is what we did there. That's exactly what I'm looking for. I will shut up now. Thank you.
They're all good questions, Melissa.
There was a question from, I think it was Jane also, that was not answered yet. Would you go back to the chat just for a moment, or is it too late to do that, Catherine?
You can actually do it on your own field. You can just hit the chat bar of that little arrow. But Jane said, how did you integrate the principles into the toolkit for ethical behavior and stakeholder interests? She says, I understand how you can do that with accountability and compliance.
Well, as we stated, going through each of the actions and each of the stages in the plan, do, check, and act cycle, those principles need to be addressed as you're going through. So, for example, if you're developing procedures for a specific, program, for example, you would want to sort of examine, okay, how are we going to exhibit, accountability or transparency, and that might be through, the development of the procedure, that it has to address those specific issues. Or, if you're going through prioritization of risk, you might want to consider compliance. So these are the kinds of things that we're asking, organizations as we're going through, and that's necessary as you're going through each of the steps to think about these principles and how are we going to exhibit them. So that's sort of a short answer. It's sort of a loaded answer, but it's sort of the shortest answer I can give. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay. Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense to me, Jane. If you have any, yes. And I'm having problems with the poll right now myself too. So I'm wondering if, in fact, there's a problem with the system, because I can't collapse the panel and go back and look at it. So. I apologize. In the meantime, if people are able to even put into the chat the answers to some of those questions, that would be very helpful as well. So I guess that sort of brings us to the end of our session. Are there any other questions that people would like to, because I am able to look at the chat, so if you're able to type something into the chat, that would be good. And with that, okay, and Sarah's saying she had to double click the text boxes to use them. So that might be one of the things that you have to do. I'd like to thank Sandra and Stephen for sharing this tool for us and all of the great work that you've done, and for Huron County to have the foresight to see the value of this and the government to help support it as well. So thank you so much, guys, for bringing this forward. And I think for those of us who are sitting here going, hey, this sounds really great, but we really need to get into more detail and understand what it really means for us, I think that's where perhaps the course comes in, and it would be great to have you involved in that. Thank you again for joining us, and as I say, all registered participants will receive the recording link. You'll have those in a couple of hours, so you'll be able to go back and re-listen to some of what you heard. And next month's webinar is focusing on the G4, so that might be something that you might want to come back for in another month's time. And with that, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And we look forward to having you involved in future webinars and courses. And thanks for taking the time. And appreciate that. And I don't know, is anybody now finding the poll is working for them okay? Or are they able to? Yes, now I've got the chat bar back, so it is working. Good.
And Catherine,
Right.
I'm able to stick around for a little bit more time if anyone has any other questions that they need. I don't know about, are you able to keep the line open, Catherine, or do you have to shut her down pretty much?
No? Nope, we can stay on as long as you want. So anyone who wants to stay on and ask questions to Steve, if you want to get rid of that polling bar and you just want to look at the participants so you can unmute yourself, just go up to the participant bar and hit the little arrow and it will come down, and then you can see yourself and you can unmute yourself. Or you can put something into the chat and Steve can provide you with some feedback from your questions in the chat. So again, thank you so much, everyone. And it's 1:02, so we look forward to seeing you again. I would imagine, you know, just as we're talking here, Steve and Sandra, this implementation manual, or I can remember assessment guide that you talked about, is it quite an extensive document? How do you find, like, there's a lot of material you must drill down into.
Yeah, well, what we wanted to do is we also wanted, because of all the material that we reviewed, we wanted to make sure that, and we knew that people are very busy, we wanted to really focus in on the basics, and we wanted to make it very brief. So it covers a lot of information, but not in a lot of pages. So we thought that would be appreciated by all those people who have very little time to read. So so it's not, it takes a lot of information, it condenses it into a very small, manageable size.
Terrific. Okay. Well, it's a wonderful piece of work, and thank you for doing it. And I'm looking forward to looking at your new website. That is very cool, and I'd love to know how you managed to get the GRI to tweet you out. That's quite a coup.
I know. We're very excited. And in fact, I had seen Mike Wallace from he's in the New York office at the G4 launch at the TSC in Toronto, and I approached him with it. So I don't know if that had something to do with it, but we've certainly had an email come in from GRI this morning. So I'm sure we'll find out how that has all developed.
That is great.
But yeah, it's
Good
very
job.
exciting. We're very excited about it.
Okay. All right. Did anybody stick around to talk? I still see we have a few people on the line. Cheryl or Chris, maybe I can unmute everyone. And if there is anyone who's still around who wants to talk. I see, Matthew, are you still on the line? So you're in the mining industry. I just thought that was quite neat that, yeah, I don't know. Oh, Chris has got his hand up. Chris, you're unmuted, so if you want to talk, you can do that if you have that ability. If not, just put something in the chat. I know sometimes people don't have the equipment to talk. Oh yes, Melissa's saying that she's trying to get her plant to create a sustainability specialist position. And she's needing help to get the business case in place. So that's pretty neat.
I mean, I think the thing to focus on as well is that there's that perception that organizations have to create something new, and the beauty about sort of the Sustainability Toolkit approach is that we're looking at building onto existing systems. So it doesn't have to be viewed as this thing that takes on a life of itself, you know, and you have to create sort of new processes. There's no need for that. A lot of the processes are already existing within the organization, so it's just really taking a look at, you know, how it needs to be, you know, changed.
Absolutely. Well, that is great. Anybody else have other questions? I don't know, Chris, if you were able to type yours in, or I know you muted yourself again, so perhaps you didn't have the ability to speak. But all right, well, I think if there isn't anything else, And maybe there's an opportunity, Sandra, for a follow-up call with Melissa to help her with that business case. That would be really great.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to call us.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much, everyone. And I think I am going to shut the system down. But thank you very much for doing this. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody on the 24th of October when we start the course.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks, Catherine.
Bye-bye.